All right, I'm very excited about today's special guest. He's an up-and-coming player in the IFL, that is the Indoor Football League, with the Duke City Gladiators. In Week 19, he earned Special Teams Player of the Week based on the performance that he had involving 2 blocked kicks, including one that went for a touchdown that ended up being the difference in the game. So real quick, I wanted to play a clip from a recent interview, one of his teammates talking about Mason Newton, and here's that clip. Wrong clip. My fault.
And he's the most trustworthy person in the world. Anybody, every single person on our team is elated to always have Mason around. I mean, if you got $100 and you need somebody to take care of it, you give it to Mason. I mean, he is one of the most honorable people I've ever met.
You can't possibly ask for a better introduction from a teammate than that of Byron Cooper. And here is Mr. Mason Newton. How you doing this morning, Mason?
Good. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, always super excited to talk to one of my Colorado guys. Mason here graduated from Colorado Mesa University, not far from where I live, actually, Utah native. So Mason, let's go ahead and jump into it real quick.
Perfect.
So really quick, before we get into this, how did you like Colorado for the 5 seasons you spent here?
I absolutely loved it. Honestly, it's only 4.5 hours from where I grew up, and it's become my second home, to be honest. It's beautiful too.
I'm glad to hear it. If you're ever back in town, we'll have to grab lunch or something.
Oh well, I'm in town right now, actually.
Okay, cool, definitely. Well, we'll have to work something out before you end up having to report.
Let's figure it out.
Absolutely. So you're a native of Utah originally, correct? As you said, only about 4.5 hours away.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about how big football is in the state of Utah where you grew up.
It's honestly, I'd say really big. If you look at Utah right now, since Dixie State, the college went up to 1AA, or I think it's now called Utah Tech. There's only D1 football in Utah. There's one JUCO, Snow College, but I mean, other than that, football is all big D1, and it's huge. You have the biggest Utah BYU fans. That's like a whole religious and every sort of kind of rivalry you can have up there. You're either a Utah fan or a BYU fan in Utah. But I mean, football, it's big. It's not as big as, your Texas, your California, everything else. But we get so many kids from California that move into Utah. The football is growing like crazy. I coached this last year, and I want to say 20 of our guys were from California. So there's a significant player base, and it's growing, and I wish it was bigger, but mid-tier at least.
Absolutely. That's completely fair. I'm just not overly familiar with the culture out there in Utah and how important football is. It's, not necessarily talked about like Texas is, like you mentioned, Texas, it's football country. So I was curious about how it's looked at out there.
Yeah.
So you ended up, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying 100%. I mean, Sunday is a church day there. So that's why there's no pro team.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So you ended up attending Woods Cross High School. Hopefully I have that correct.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So where you actually played, as far as I understand, all 3 phases of the game, playing linebacker, tight end, and then also playing some special teams. So
yes,
how
sir.
did you end up ultimately setting in primarily on defense for college?
Well, I'd have to say that was my high school coach. His name was Mike Tidwell, and he understood that I knew how to play the game of football, and I had a high IQ when I was, coming through the ranks. He tried me out at linebacker, and he goes, "Holy cow, this dude knows football," and that was my strong suit. I wasn't ever the fastest linebacker. I wasn't the biggest linebacker, but I was smart enough to always be in the right position, always, be right there for the pick, right there for the sack, tackle, so on and so forth. So, and I'd rather be the hammer than the nail. So that would be why I chose defense. I ran the ball once, and I was like, yeah, no, this ain't it.
Okay, so it looks like the statistics I found for you in high school actually are correct. So a lot of times you see one catch, one carry, and you're like, well, I don't know if I want to trust those high school statistics. Sometimes they log one game and then they never log another game in a guy's career. So I just didn't want to say that, but it sounds like their statistics are spot on. So it's kind of funny. And then, as always, Byron tuning in. Thanks, man. We really appreciate your support. Obviously, just the highest opinion of you, Mason. So glad to see him tuning in.
That is mutual, to be honest. That Byron was the first dude. The first day I get in there, I'm hitting this bag through the tryouts, and he goes, "Damn, this white boy can hit." And that's all he said. It was the funniest thing. From then on, we've been the best of friends.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Byron's a character, man. And honestly, like a little, peek behind the scenes for everybody. At one point, I had talked to Byron about coming on for an interview first. And then I had Vinny on before I had Byron on. And Byron hit me up and he was like, give me a little shit for it. He's like, I know I talked to you first. Like, why did Vinny get on before me? Which I thought was hilarious. So Byron, once again, man, thank you for coming on a couple weeks ago. Really appreciate it. And as you can tell, we clipped up that interview to use for an intro for Mason today. So thank you once again for all the kind words for Mason as well.
Appreciate it.
So talk to me about your recruitment process and how you ultimately ended up settling on Colorado Mesa University.
The recruitment process was difficult. So, like I said, I wasn't the fastest or the strongest, and that's what most coaches told me. And they're like, man, you're just too slow, to this, to that. I had walk-on offers all over the place, but I had signed to Colorado Mesa. They said they'd be able to find me money. And the defensive coordinator calls me day after I signed and goes, man, I just watched your tape. You're legit. I'm going to get you some money. And so then they gave me a half ride scholarship. In D2, they don't give you full ride. So they, pretty much gave me a full ride scholarship. And that's where I stayed.
Very nice. Very nice. I mean, kind of an interesting way to get there, but hey, whatever it takes, right?
Yeah, the whole football career I've had has just been interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As people will see as we go through this. So as we were just talking about, you end up at CMU under a head coach in Russ Martin, who actually played linebacker during his career. So how big of an influence was Coach Martin on your career?
Huge. He was the coolest guy. He set a lot of precedents for me on and off the field. It was just an echo from high school. High school coaches show up on time, this, that, and everything else. And it was like, I never skipped a beat. I pretty much had the same coach 5 years, and he just installed a lot of, drive and determination. And plus he's a really smart dude in the realm of football. So he taught me a lot from there, also through interviews, so on and so forth. We had a really good connection on and off the field. Still do.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That was one of the things that I wanted to talk about as well. I mean, CMU did have a remarkable run of continuity there for your career. I mean, it seemed like, most colleges, it's hard to find schools that can keep a coach for as long as they've kept Coach Martin down there. So it was interesting to see that he was actually the coach that you came in under and were able to graduate under.
Yep.
Speaking of that continuity and that success that came from it, your first 3 seasons at CMU, you actually ended up winning 3 straight RMAC championships from 2015 to 2017. Yes, what was it about those teams that made you guys so good for such a long stretch period?
I'd have to say it was camaraderie, and that's exactly what it was. I mean, those guys, there's 3 or 4 of them from those 3 teams that I played with that I still talk to this day. There's, I think, one of them who plays over in Germany right now. But that team camaraderie, like the defense, I tell you what, we went everywhere together. We did everything together. I mean, say parties, you name it, like everywhere. And then the offense, would play off us. And I mean, practice was crazy. If we weren't fighting, it wasn't a good practice kind of thing. But after practice, it was cool. It was just football. Everyone was chill. No one was at each other's throats. It was just a crazy environment to be around. And the family aspect was so big that those teams became so successful off of that family environment.
Absolutely. Something we were just talking about off camera about the Duke City Gladiators, actually.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that in a bit. But another one of your teammates is tuning in, and he's got a question for you. So first, we'll put this one up. Eric
Okay.
Swiftwater, wide
Yeah.
receiver, defensive back, linebacker type. My RMAC brother from competitors to teammates. And then he says, ask him how it went when they came to Spearfish.
Oh, we don't want to talk about that. They gave us a whooping, and I was freezing cold. It was awful. Spearfish is no joke. It's a 18-hour bus ride, and then you got to get out in the freezing cold. Yeah, they spanked us pretty good.
Hey, Eric, if you're still watching, man, definitely want to stick around. There's a couple highlights in here that you're going to show up in later on, so we'll definitely make sure to play those later. So in 2019, your senior year, you had an unbelievable season, starting on defense and playing several special teams units. In 11 games, you rack up 70 tackles, 22 tackles for a loss, 11 sacks, a forced fumble and a recovery, and a blocked kick, adding another 3 kick returns for 29 yards all randomly.
Yes, sir.
So was it simply that you were getting more playing time, or did the coaching staff kind of alter the way they used you as a senior?
It was a little bit of the coaching staff. My defensive line coach, his name was Evo, Coach Evo, and he'd always have this call. It was out of our 3-man front. He'd just tell me to just attack, and I just fly around people. What really installed that was working out. Like I came into my senior season the fittest, strongest I have ever been. Like squatting 630. Benching all over the place. Like I came in the strongest I've ever been, and that led into my senior career just being basically a psychopath. I led the nation in D2 with sacks for I think 9 weeks. And I just said, well, this is my last shot, give it all I got. And I had a team that backed me with that family camaraderie aspect. So yeah. Just play football, honestly.
Well, it was an amazing season. I'm curious, at that point, were you still playing about 250 pounds?
Yeah, I was 245.
Gotcha. And just out of curiosity, you're playing up around 280 with Duke City, correct?
Talk about 290 right now.
Okay.
Upward to 290. So yes.
I didn't want to overshoot it. I'd rather undershoot it. So
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So coming out of college in 2019 into the 2020 draft was difficult on every player. It doesn't matter whether you're D2, D1. I mean, with the combine shutting down, pro days being basically a rarity at that point, it was one of the things that it really took the football world and flipped it upside down, because literally the only league that I know of in the world that was able to operate in 2020 was the NFL. With that, do you think this kind of delayed the start of your football career professionally?
That super delayed my start. So I was a dark horse jumping into the ring, D2 school, whatever. I ran my pro day up at UNC. I think it was March 18th, somewhere like March 15th, 18th, somewhere like that. And I was getting a lot of love, especially from the Broncos. And they took me aside afterwards. I went and took the IQ test, so on and so forth. They said they'd be in touch. And that Monday rolls around and COVID shut the world down. And that's kind of everything was derailed from then on. So, yeah, it's definitely been a wild ride.
That's unbelievable. I mean, the fact that, first of all, let's just point out the fact that Denver, does not look at the Colorado schools very often. For whatever reason, they don't have a history of signing Colorado kids. It just doesn't happen. So for them to show interest in you, I mean, that must have been kind of a dream come true coming out of college when you're playing D2 ball.
Yeah, I was elated, especially because I'm a Broncos fan, so I was all over it.
That's awesome. Did you become a Broncos fan before moving to Denver or Colorado? Excuse me.
Yes, actually, my mom was. She was giving me crap one day. She's like, "You got to pick a football team to be a fan of." I was like, "Well, who's closest?" She's like, Arizona or Colorado. I was like, all right, done. Colorado. They're my team. So I've been following ever since I was really young because my mom's a Seahawks fan. My dad's a Saints fan. And I'm like, you guys grew up in Utah. What's going on? So
I can't say much. Like I told you off camera, I'm a Denver native, born and raised, and as you can see, I'm a very diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan. Although I do have some Broncos stuff up there.
Hey, that's okay.
That shirt right there has a signature from Shannon Sharp on it. Believe it or not.
Really?
That's from a training camp way back in the day. My little brother, he's like 30 now, but he was wearing that shirt when he was like 3, and my dad handed him over so Shannon could sign his. It's kind of cool.
Super cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I grew up in a house that was Denver Broncos, everything. We literally had a room in the house that was called Bronco Room. So kind of funny how we all ended up fans of other teams. But anyway, in 2021, you ended up kind of dipping a toe in the semi-pro world real quick. I wanted to ask you, how did your time go there and what led you to the indoor game ultimately?
Well, it was real quick. I mean, I think we had a total of 3 games because they were still battling through COVID, but it was kind of, I had a coach call me, goes, hey, dude, this could be something legit. Come try out. I was like, okay, tried out, got the team. Wasn't a big deal. And then that's where I met my agent. And the team kind of folded, rolled up. They were just kind of done playing through the whole COVID thing. And then my agent goes, man, you're pretty good. You should go to this tryout. And so I ended up go heading to the Duke City tryout. It was a quick little stint and a lot of training. So
interesting. I mean, I would argue that your agent should have been telling you that from day one, but just saying.
I agree. Trust me.
Just saying. Here we got another one of your teammates, Greg Dent, another former guest of the show. Hey, tuned in while I work out. Appreciate that, Greg. So with that being said, I wanted to throw up your highlight video that I clipped up this morning. I could not find any professional highlight film for Mason. So real quick, I threw together this. It's all from week 19, the week that he won the Special Teams Player of the Week award, and you'll see why.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, we talked about your agent real briefly. Who is your agent and how have they helped you get to where you're at today?
So his name is John Price. And I mean, he's helped me through everything. He's been in and out of so many different leagues. He's a smaller guy. I'm pretty sure I'm like one of four dudes he takes care of. But he knows so much about the agency, and he also knows so many people throughout, every league and everything else. And he's been a super big help trying to, push through the IFL, push to higher leagues, everything else. So
interesting.
He's the guy.
Absolutely. So as I was just speaking about, there's the first of 1 or 2 blocked kicks in this game. It literally landed right in Eric Swiftwater's hands. He returned it for a touchdown, and they made the extra point, which, by the way, I believe Mason was long snapping on. And immediately they tied up the game. And then later on, here is his second blocked kick of the game.
So it's funny that Swift, before that, he goes, dude, if you block it, I'll score the touchdown. And I was like, done, I'll block it.
That's awesome. I mean, well, he held up your end of the bargain, and so did you,
this
right?
one just about goes to him, too.
I know, it was right over his head. That's crazy. That's crazy. So I'm curious. I mean, obviously, we talked about the fact that you blocked two kicks in this game, but that was 2 of 5 kicks all season, and you had another block in college. So is there like a technique to blocking kicks that you've perfected, or how are you so good at this?
Drive your feet and keep your hands up. That's what my college coach told me, and I was like, I pushed that damn sled with so much weight on it. I feel like I can just throw around people. And I gotta give props to Jimmy and a couple of these other guys. every once in a while they'll give me a big old shove in the back, and I tell you what, take off just like a rocket, little torpedo action. You just go straight down the middle of it.
In fact, you could see that on that second block, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody shoved you a little bit, but hey, you know what? It's legal at the end of the day.
Yes, sir.
It's effective, obviously. I mean, it ended up being the difference in that game against the team that ended up winning the championship. So,
they were
huge performance. So you said you ended up going to an open trial with Duke City. How was your performance in the trial, and how did the coaches end up approaching you about a contract offer?
It went pretty great. I'm pretty sure they knew about me prior to, so I wasn't coming in, blind or no one knowing about me. But I showed up, and I thought I performed very, very well. And end of the day, they walked up to me and goes, "Hey, dude, stay around. You're coming to camp tomorrow." Came to camp the next day, kind of started right into practice. And after like the third day of camp, they're like, "Hey, dude, you're on. Let's go. You're running with the team." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. I'll come back during camp." I think I was like a couple weeks later or something like that. So came back and just crushed it. And it helped, Byron was there and everyone else. It was pretty cool after they figured out kind of who I was and where I was from. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. So in 2022, you spent the season with the Duke City Gladiators, obviously. Even though you had to kind of split snaps at times, playing in more of like a rotational role, you still managed 6.5 tackles for a loss, a couple sacks, 3 fumble recoveries, a pass breakup, and more importantly, like I just talked about, 5 blocked kicks. So I'm just curious. I mean, were you happy with your performance? Do you feel like there's more to come from Mason Newton?
Oh, there's way more in the tank. So I kind of equated back to my first year of college. I was swimming. I'm like, holy cow, this game's faster. Like, I'm not 100% sure what's going on. And, I had that background. And so I came into here, and I tell you what, this game is fast. I was not ready at all. I was like, okay, this will be cool, but that high motion, that ball is in and out of the hands of the quarterback. And so it took me a long time to adjust to the game. And having Coop and a couple of these other guys like help me along really helped with my adjustment to the game. So there's definitely more to come. I'm getting stronger, faster, larger, of course. But it was a really large culture shock because this game is quick. It's absurdly fast.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that a little bit. What adjustments did you have to make to your techniques as a pass rusher in order to become more efficient in the indoor game?
Well, speed, honestly, because if you think that ball's gone. That ball's gone in 1.52 seconds. Downset height catch gone. So if you think too much, you make the wrong read, you don't trust the guys next to you, it's game over. And the one thing you have to really rely on your DBs. If you can, plug the guy on the high motion, you get enough coverage, you get a coverage snap. And that's what Coop was good at. Coop's like, "Hey, dude, don't come my way. I got this one." I was like, "All right, dude, whatever. I'll try to peel him off of you." But it's definitely speed that is the biggest determining factor in this game. Strength applies, but speed is king.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about it before, but you've kind of transitioned from a linebacker / tight end and a little bit of a defensive end position, kind of pass rush specialist, into a nose tackle spot with the Duke City Gladiators. How much of a transition was that for you?
It was huge. I've never played inside the line. The last time I played guard or tackle or nose or deep tackle on defense was Little League. So I haven't been there for a long time. And it was a little different. I didn't get my edge rush. I didn't get to, peek around the edge. You're head on head on this league, and it's right into the coals. Like you're downset hiking, you're face to face with the dude. So it was a big adjustment, and I wasn't necessarily ready for it week 1 or week 2, but I quickly learned and adapted to where I could make a living there, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I would agree. I mean, I saw it in week 19. Again, that was the film that I broke down this morning very heavily. So a lot of times you're getting a really good push. You might not necessarily finish the play, but you're in the backfield almost every play. And it was like consistent throughout the game. So it's very interesting. Byron, speed is king, so Coop is king, right? Well,
it should be.
You saw the article, man. I fully intend for you to lead the league in sacks this season, and a big reason why is because of all the guys that you play around, and one of them is right next to me right now. So, so I feel you of all people are uniquely qualified to answer this next question. But how important is it playing sound special teams to a team hoping to win a championship in 2023?
It's probably the most important part of football, honestly. A lot of people sleep on the special teams. And I mean, you sleep on a couple of special teams, you get a couple blocked field goals, you make solid tackles, you pin them deep. Like it'll sway the way of the game. It'll sway the whole game. And that's something Coach Martin from earlier, he installed in me, is how important special teams were. And that's why I played so many special teams. Is, if you can't make it playing offense or defense, you better be able to make it playing special teams, because that's, that extra, like, plus I can do special teams kind of thing on your resume. So I believe in special teams being one of the most important aspects of the game, because there are 3 aspects: offense, defense, and special teams. You have to complete all 3 to win.
Absolutely. So obviously this past season, we watched a lot of players get their opportunity from alternative football leagues due to their ability on special teams. Do you believe that your ability to play special teams is your ticket back to the outdoor game eventually?
I'm sure hoping so, because I love it outdoor. I love it indoor. I just love playing football. But I mean, if that's my ticket, that's my ticket, and I'll ride that all the way. So
absolutely. With that in mind, is there any special teams unit you don't play on? No. I was going to say, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I mean, you're literally in on the field goal unit as a long snapper. You're in on all the coverage units. You play on field goal return.
I don't play coverage as often. They usually reserve that for the little quicker dudes. But other than that, I play every phase of the game, and I did in high school as well, or college and high school. So,
absolutely. So moving back to your acumen on the defensive side of the ball, you are a guy that I fully expect to see an increased role at that nose tackle position in 2023. So what are your personal goals for this season outside of the obvious one, winning a championship?
Exactly. Got to win that. But I mean, personal goals is at least 5 tackles a game, and just to own my role, if that makes any sense. I mean, when I came in, I was more of a supportive guy. I had Jason Serta, Byron, I had a whole bunch of dudes around me. And so I wasn't as key of a role. I was more of the supporting actor in a way. And this year, talking to the coaches and everything, I guess I'll probably get a little more freedom. So I'll be able to hopefully show up and do a little more. Granted, while still supporting my guys. Because, I mean, in the middle of the field, that's you dictate a lot if you can control the middle of the field. So
100%. I think in a 3-down front, the nose tackle might be the most important position on that front. I mean, because you're expected to eat up multiple blocks on a given play. I mean, I know it's a little bit different in the indoor game where you're playing more one-on-one matchups, but it's still very important. Mm-hmm. Long story short, no quarterback likes pressure in their face. So when you got Mason across from you, it's going to be a bad day for a quarterback. So you heard it from the man himself in 2023 in a recent interview that Byron Cooper is most likely playing his last year of football. Now, obviously, I don't want Cooper to take up your entire interview here, but I'm curious, how big of a motivation is it for you guys on the team to win a championship for veterans like Byron Cooper, like Nate Davis, guys who are possibly nearing the end of their career?
It's huge. It takes back to that family aspect. Like they're my boys, they're my family. So I'm going to do whatever I can to give them the best shot, and I know they're going to reciprocate. So, I mean, you just got to ball out for the guy next to you. It sucks. It's Coop's last year, but I totally get it. Your body starts to get old after a while. But I mean, it's all about playing for the guy next to you, and I want to give them a ring as well as give me a ring. And if I can send them out with one, that goes good on me. It looks good, and then we can stay in touch a little longer because we can, FaceTime and show each other the rings or whatever happens, stay in touch. So.
Absolutely. So hashtag win one for Coop. Started that last time. I need to get a little bit heavier on the usage of that. So you've played a bit of tight end. You've even played some fullback at times. Yet you're listed as a defensive/offensive lineman, which, by the way, I had no idea about until I looked up your statistics.
Yep.
So have you ever actually played on the offensive line other than long snapper for the Gladiators?
Yeah, I have for the Gladiators. It was, let's see, I did a little bit during a Massachusetts game, and then during Arizona, the last time we played them, one of our guard tackle, he got ejected from the game, and so they're like, "Well, shoot, dude, you're up." Threw me in. So
interesting. How'd you do?
I thought I did pretty well. My agent, he was like, "Dude, do not ever play offense again." But I was like, "Hey, I haven't played since high school, so I'm just trying to do my best out there."
I love that. So do you have any hidden skills on the field that we maybe wouldn't know about?
What do you mean by hidden skills?
Well, I mean, like we've talked about the fact that you've played some tight end. We've talked about the fact that you run the ball at times. I mean, are you the type of guy that could step in and, play a tight end position still to this day?
Oh yeah, for sure. 100%. I guess like special skills, I was the backup kicker for a week. So, I mean, that was cool. So
there you go.
Well, like my mom said when I was young, she's like, "You better be athletic because we aren't rich. So figure it out, dude." So I tried to play every position I possibly could.
I love that. That's a funny story. That's semi similar to the message I got from my parents. So I can relate to that for sure. So you talked about the fact that you ran a pro day back in 2020. I'm kind of curious. What did you run in the 40 and the 3-cone?
My 40 was a 4.8. No, what was it? It was a 4.92, 4.9 something. My 3-cone was a 6.4, and my 5.10.5 was a 4.2. Broad jumped 9, damn near broad jumped 10 feet. Yeah, I vert jumped 32.5 inches. So I mean,
impressive.
I said I did pretty well. I mean, only 245. So
absolutely.
40's never been my strong suit. So
that's to be expected. I mean, you're playing nose tackle at this particular point. So I mean, how often? I want to say how often are you running downfield chasing guys down? But then I watch your film, and you're literally always chasing the ball carrier. So I stand corrected already.
Yeah.
So, who are some of the players that you watch as far as learning techniques at the professional level, whether it's at the NFL, in the IFL, whatever it may be?
In college, I watched a lot of Von Miller, J.J. Watt, and the Bosa brothers. So, I mean, the Bosa, I love watching them because they have this just unrelenting motor. Von Miller was the pass rush king, and J.J. Watt, he's just a stud. My buddy, Filippo Mokofisi, I don't know if that name sounds familiar to you, but when he was getting drafted, he played up at the U. He went and met J.J. Watt, and I was like, dude, he has a picture with him and everything. I've always kind of looked up to J.J. Watt. I was like, man, I want to be like that guy when I get older. So, I mean.
Looking at your game, I can see that. I mean, I'm not saying that just to inflate your ego. I mean, it really, you break down the similarities between J.J. Watt and yourself. I mean, there's a lot of similarities there, so it makes a lot of sense.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So in 2022, obviously you worked under a defensive-minded head coach who played all over the field during his playing career. Are you the type of player that is better off being moved around, similar to how Coach Griggs was, or would you prefer to simply sit and play nose tackle?
I mean, I'm completely content sitting and staying, but I do love defensive end. And I mean, I played a little bit of it last year too, when, they needed to, when they had to shake something up, throwing a different front, whatever needed to happen. I'm totally comfortable moving anywhere and everywhere. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm going to go play, safety or anything like that. But if it's on the D line, I'll play it and I'll be happy about it.
Absolutely. That's completely fair. For any random outdoor teams that might be interested, if you were called upon to drop weight and go back to defensive end as a pass rusher full time, would that be something you'd be comfortable with?
Oh, 100%. I'd be there all day.
Okay, cool. Obviously, for these interviews, for anybody who's wondering why I'm asking some of these questions, the thought is that if a coach ever sees this from the outdoor game, the purpose is to showcase exactly what these players are capable of, what they can do, what they feel comfortable with, because it saves a lot of conversation that these coaches need to have with these guys. And perhaps, hopefully, this is seen by the right people at some point.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So on to my next I guess it's not really a question. It's more of how do you feel about this quote coming from your position coach, Coach Choice. We picked up Mason in a walk-in tryout in his rookie season. He is any IFL team's dream player because he's an Iron Man and a Swiss Army knife. He can match up with any offensive lineman and dominate all game, or go to the offensive side and we run the ball behind him every play. He's played running back, kicker, blocked several game-winning field goal attempts. His work ethic off the field is unmatched also. He's an extra coach on the field, and no one can touch what he does in the weight room. He is our best weapon in game planning because week to week we can change his role and ruin the other team's scouting report. So I've heard a lot of coaches' quotes, but man, talk about the exact quote you'd want to hear from a coach. I mean, how does that make you feel?
That's pretty perfect. I love it. I mean, Chris Choice, he was one of the coaches that really dove in and invested in me. And I mean, that's perfect to be said by a guy who pretty much taught me a large majority, if not everything I know about indoor football. I mean, with him and Coop, Coach Choice was leading the practice. Coop was going, yeah, but this and this. And I mean, they taught me everything. He's one of the big reasons I even know anything about IFL football. So
that's amazing. Perfect. That's amazing. I mean, like I said, I was kind of a little surprised, and we talked a little bit more, and he actually told me the thing about you being the backup kicker for a couple of weeks, and I was like, man, you are about as versatile as they come. I mean, when we look back at your past, like he said, you've played running back, tight end, defensive line, whether it's defensive end, defensive or nose tackle, linebacker. It's crazy. It's crazy to see. I mean, so personally, I think that's one of the strengths that you bring to the game for sure.
I appreciate it. I've never really fit one role. I just get moved around every time somebody needs it. So, team player.
Exactly. And that works both ways, because in the coach's aspect of things, they're able to move you around and put you in the best possible position to succeed, which I think would probably help your case in terms of getting back to the outdoor game long term.
100%. Yes, sir.
So I've got one last question for you, and then we'll wrap this up. Obviously, as far as the Gladiators go, you are one of the younger players on the team. So I'm curious, how much of an asset is it to you, in your mind, to play alongside a very veteran-heavy roster?
Probably the greatest possible way you could get into it, because they can teach you so much. They can teach you little intricacies. They can teach you, hey, if I were going to do that, I mean, and that's one conversation I've had a lot with Nate Davis. He goes, because I'd go sit in and watch their offensive film, and he'd, out of the corner of his eye, he'd catch me and be like, you need to do this, though. Like, if I were a D end or if I were a D lineman, you should do this. And I mean, playing with those guys like Coop, even, I mean, there's a lot of veterans, and they can teach me a lot, and they can continue basically shaping me and molding me into a better athlete. And I mean, I've always grown up, respect your elders. I mean, I'm not saying they're that much older than me, but they know more than me, and that is a valuable tool that I can take. And I mean, I soak it up any chance I can get. It's a great way to get introduced in the IFL for sure.
I would agree, and I think that's an asset to every young player that comes in and plays for Duke City, because you guys are molded by some of the best in the game in terms of the veterans on this team. So very, very huge advantage to anybody who comes in as a younger player like yourself.
Yep, 100%.
So real quick before we get out of here, I wanted to give you an opportunity to, first of all, tell fans where they can find you on social media, and second of all, shout anybody out that you would like to.
Okay. Well, I mean, social media, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. So, I mean, under Mason Newton, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm pretty sure my Instagram has a picture of my butt on it, so it's easy to tell. But, I mean, I want to shout out the whole Duke City roster. I want to shout out, Coop, Swift, everybody I have and haven't played with. I mean, you got Big Dent, you got Nate, I could sit here all day and just shout out the whole roster of Duke City. But I really have to give my shout to Coach Choice, Coach Sherm, Griggs, and Gina. I mean, they invested in me and gave me a shot. I mean, I wasn't playing football I do that 2021. I wasn't playing ball, and they invited me in, and here I am today, playing for them. So I got to give them a lot of props. And
That's
I guess
awesome.
I got to shout out my parents too. I'm pretty sure they're watching, or will be watching. So I got to shout out my mom and dad because they taught me everything I knew growing up. So.
That is important. You should probably shout out your parents. Yeah. With that being said,
one more. I mean, I got to shout out my girlfriend. She allows me to leave for 6 months at a time. So, I mean, that takes some type of girl. So,
definitely, that's a large part, or that's a large commitment to be with somebody that is basically away 6 months out of the year. So, yeah, 100%. Definitely props to her for sticking around and giving you the ability to go do that, because quite honestly, she could complicate your life and tell you, hey, I don't like it when you play football. Women have a hold over us men at times. That's for sure.
Amen. Got you by the balls.
Absolutely. So Mason, it's been a pleasure learning more about your career, man. Once again, super excited to have another Colorado, alum here. So thank you for coming on, and I look forward to what you do in the 2023 season.
Thank you, sir. Stay tuned. It'll be fun.
Absolutely. I plan on it. I'm hoping to get down there and catch a couple games live and maybe come meet some of you guys in person.
Yes, you need to.
I will definitely try. So
Perfect.
Once again, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day, man, and I appreciate everything.
You as well.
Absolutely. So once again, guys, that was Mason Newton, just an all-around good dude, and personally one of my new favorite players out there in the world. I'm always a fan of the guys that can do a little bit of everything, and as I highlighted several times throughout this interview, Mason can do just about everything on a football field. He's a lot like these guys, Byron Cooper, Eric Swiftwater, Greg Dent. A lot of these guys on Duke City will play and do anything a coach asks, and that's another reason why this team is so successful and has that family mentality, because all these guys are willing to do whatever it takes to win a game. And personally, I relate to that quite a bit. I personally love the fact that all these guys have that same mentality, and I'm very, very excited about the roster that the Duke City Gladiators have built for 2023, and I personally think that this is going to end with a championship ring on all of those men's fingers. So with that being said, I thank you all for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that like button, comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and more importantly, share this with your friends. So a big reason why we are trying to grow and trying to get bigger is to grow a bigger platform for these players. The whole purpose is to tell their story and to reward their trust somehow, some way. Hopefully we can be a part of their career and their journey to the outdoor game or wherever they want to get in their football career. And that's the ultimate goal of the station. So in order for us to do that, we need your help to grow, to continue to bring more and more eyes and a bigger audience to all these players and their stories. So once again, thank you everybody for your support, and I'll catch you later on today with wide receiver Akil Greer at 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. He has signed with the Vegas Nighthawks for the 2023 season, and he was actually one of the players that had to live through the debacle that was the MLFB in 2022. So definitely